Pat, we know, and all the veterans died for, we know that the Democrats are for this, but the Republicans seem to be leading this, even though it's going to lose them control of the House and maybe even the Senate, or the Senate, maybe even the House. I mean, we're seeing this unfold, and George Bush continues to try to spin it with doublespeak, saying, oh, no, my guest worker program is an amnesty, but you read the plan, as you mentioned, the Kennedy plan that Bush has been supporting, it's blanket, total amnesty, and in the SPP.gov agreement signed last March in Waco, Texas, it says that we're going to have an American ID card in North America, and all the Mexicans and Canadians will instantly be legalized.
Well, that's the instrument by which the nations are welded together is the NAFTA superhighway, coming up from Lázaro Cárdenas port all the way up through the United States into Canada. And people don't, they bring the containers in from China, and they bring them to a customs port, if you can believe it, in Kansas City. That's
how are
exactly
Americans going to like the Mexican government running a large portion of that city?
Well, I think the American people are up in arms, but we cannot get any response from the government of the United States.
That's the thing. 97% of Texans that even just have a small glimpse of what the Trans-Texas Corridor is, the first leg of the NAFTA highways, 97% the Houston Chronicle poll are against it, 90% are against open borders, but 70% are against the Iraq War, but they don't care. The establishment just keeps moving forward, Pat. How do we demand the constitutional will of the people?
You know, the Constitution says, and it's explicit, that the government of the United States shall protect the states from invasion. Now, if 12 million people here illegally, 3 times the size of the American army in Europe after World War II, if that is not an invasion, and 6 million trying to break in on Bush's watch is not an invasion, I don't know what it is. But they refuse to do it. The president himself has said, look, I can't defend the borders unless you give me basically my guest worker program and my amnesty program.
And then you won't need to. Then you won't
defend the borders.
Then you won't need to because there won't be a border.
There's not going to, exactly. If you do not get the border under control now, then the agenda of these people will be realized by default.
They know what they're doing, and, Pat, I hear some of the mainline conservative talk show hosts up there spinning it. They'll talk about the border problem, but then they won't go all the way and explain that it's headed up by George W. Neocon, more liberal than Bill Clinton. Pat, again, you know, I am a paleo-conservative. I don't want to even be associated with George Bush and his gaggle that are basically destroying this country right now. I know a lot of Americans have woken up now to how bad the immigration problem is and how serious it is to our sovereignty. But I'm always amazed to then discover, it was even in the Dallas Morning News, it was actually Rob Allen and co. that Bush hired to go in and help Fox stage those illegal alien demonstrations. So we directly have our government manipulating and fomenting and trying to use illegal aliens as a foreign group domestically in our country to manipulate our policies. I mean, that is espionage right there, Pat.
I think the regime is betraying the people. The regime is betraying the nation. The American people want their country protected. They want their borders defended. And I think the American regime in Washington, both parties, is very much in collusion with Mr. Fox and very much sympathetic with his agenda. There's no doubt about it. I think the only reason the president and the White House are moving along and offering sort of some border fence and the rest of it is because the American people and the people of the American Southwest, from Texas all the way to California, have risen up and demanded this happen. They're using this crisis, giving a little bit in that area to resolve that, they say, in order to get their amnesty and guest worker program for the transnational corporations. I think that is the bottom line. And frankly, I believe that Senator Hutchison and Mike Pence are working on a plan which I think the administration, the Washington Post, and others are behind, which is basically to say, well, we're going to have border security, but we're also going to have a path to citizenship, no amnesty. As you say, you know, misleading us all. And I think if we follow that, that's the end of the United States as we know it.
It's a shell game. It'd be like if Bush said we'll no longer have murder in the United States. We're just going to change the name. It's like they changed the name of torture to pressure. The couple hundred miles of fence and a few hundred guardsmen at any one time on the border, not even allowed to bust these illegals. They've now issued a new order a month ago. Chertoff ordered the Border Patrol to not pursue illegals above the speed limit. They're busy tying their hands. It's smoke and mirrors.
Well, it really is, And when you take a look at the numbers, the figures are astronomical. And the President of the United States, can you imagine that in last year, in 2005, he admitted that of the OTMs, these other than Mexicans, I think we caught 150,000 of them on the border. They're from the Middle East, they're from Asia to China and Africa, and nobody knows where. And they were released into our population. He said, only 1 in 4 turned up in court? What do you expect?
Well, in fact,
they're criminals who broke into our country. They're really going to turn up in court and get booted out.
Well, that's right. Going back to the Houston Chronicle again, last year they reported that 250,000 in the 2 years before it was catch and release, that foreigners other than Latin American had been released.
Sure, they were turned them loose, and Bush says, we've got to change this, Polly. Here we are, 3 years after the greatest terrorist act in America, and you got people coming in, not just from Mexico, but from other than Mexico, Middle Eastern countries. Some of them countries are known as state sponsors of terror, and they're being released.
Well, Pat Buchanan,
how can you say the border is secure?
Pat Buchanan, let's be specific, though. I don't know if you saw the Dallas Morning News back in December, but they reported then that Rob Allen Co. had been hired to craft the policy with Fox, with the White House, to stage the demonstrations. Can you specifically speak to the White House being actively involved with a foreign mass to bully the American people?
Well, I think this is the Fox and Bush have been colluding on this policy since before 9/11. There is no doubt about it. Vicente Fox was standing right beside Bush when Bush declared the Minutemen vigilantes. He is with Mr. Fox. Now, if you listen to Mr. Fox, though, he goes up to Chicago and he's speaking to Mexican-American citizens. These are Americans. And he says, basically, you are Mexicans who live north of the border. Our country extends outside of Mexico. In other words, Mexicans in America are a part of Mexico.
They're openly declaring war on us.
They're openly reaching to reclaim the allegiance of American citizens who have taken an oath of allegiance to the United States. They are pushing Mexican people into the United States. They are aiding and abetting them. They are calling them heroes. They have an agenda to make dual citizenship, Mexicans and Americans, so they get influence and control over U.S. wealth and U.S. foreign policy. And the President of the United States is either oblivious to it, but in any event, he has done nothing at all about it.
Well, Pat Buchanan, we'll come right back with another segment. I want to get into the CFR plan. We know who's pulling the strings.